Hi, everybody. It's Jill here with Illuminating Women, and this is our Friday Lunch and Learn. And we just welcome you here today. As you know, in Illuminating Women, we are about empowering women to illuminate their personal and professional life, because we believe that when women are illuminated, our families and our communities and our world is a much brighter and better and loving place. So probably a lot of you have experienced, with all this chaos going on and strife and division, that there is some negativity that can hurt you, especially at family gatherings or communications, or even especially in social media, where people can just like chop your head off and it hurts and it can really diminish you. And so I had asked this amazing woman, she's our charter member, Sarri Gilman, who is a licensed psychotherapist and an author, to come and speak with us today about setting in boundaries, the power of what boundaries can do for your self-care, to preserving what you are about, and to help you have stronger and better relationships, because they do work. So Sarri, thank you for taking your time today. I know you're a busy professional. A lot of people are reaching out to you to share with us today. Welcome to this place, and thank you.
Thank you so much. And thanks to those of you who made the time. And I really, my intention is to give you as much as I can and make this really worth your time. And do feel free to ask things in the chat, and Jill will sort through and she'll pitch them to me like baseballs. That's my favorite thing, is to have questions. So I actually professionally teach on boundaries. This really is my subject area. I have 3 books, all of which cover boundaries. One is a guided journal for people who hate journaling, because journaling is so good for you, and because boundaries is an awareness practice. So it's not a one and done. It's something where you become more and more aware, and you're constantly working on your boundaries. And so the books that I have all have journal questions in them, but the Mystery of Knowing journal is only a guided journal on boundaries and self-care. Then I have Transform Your Boundaries and Naming and Taming Overwhelm. So this really is my subject area of love. And today's focus, I think of it like a little sunflower. You know how the seeds in the sunflower feed those western blue jays out there, and they eat all those seeds once the flower blooms. I'm hoping that I leave you with some seeds today on essential boundaries to support you in this time. Now, we are in an extraordinary time, and we're dealing with extraordinary challenges. So when we're facing extraordinary challenges, it means that you're working at the deep end of the pool when it comes to boundaries. So the boundary challenges that you're having are more difficult, they are deeper, they're more intense, and that's not your imagination. Because every time we deal with high trauma, stressful events, we're dealing with extreme boundary challenges. And usually those events come to an end, but with the pandemic, things have not come to an end. And so it is going on and on and on. And so we're going to be working in the deep end of the pool today. Now, I want you to think of boundary development the way that I think of boundary development is, here we are in the deep end of the pool, extreme boundary challenges. But earlier in boundary development, when you're really working with your own boundary growth, and even if you've never worked on your boundaries, and you're going to start today, yay, but if you have been working on boundaries, you start with self-care. That is the beginning of boundary work. And then we work on emotional inner care, how to take care of the feelings that come with setting boundaries. And then the next part we get to is relational work. How do you do this interpersonally between you and other people? And then the final part is extreme boundary challenges. So imagine here we are in this pandemic with extreme boundary challenges, and many people are coming to this work starting in the deep end of the pool. They never did the foundational layers. So as you're tuning in, ask yourself how your foundational layers are underneath the extreme challenge. How are you doing with self-care? Because you can always go back and kind of strengthen your foundation. Because your boundaries only have one job, and that is to take care of you. So if your self-care is kind of imploding or very weak or very uneven, then that's really where you want to strengthen yourself before you dive into more of the boundary work, because that is essential. And so we keep coming back to self-care and making sure that we've got our foundation, our legs underneath us, kind of strong enough to hold us for the boundary work. And what I mean by emotional work is it's very emotional to set boundaries. We go through all these feelings of, do I want to, should I, how will they react? How will I handle that reaction? So it becomes very emotional for us. And we have to have the capacity to separate our feelings from our boundaries, so that we can, sometimes we don't really want to say no to somebody, but we really need to say no to somebody. And so that's what I mean by separating those. And so you want to dive in and spend some time making sure that you are noticing how you feel about a boundary before you set it, but don't let your feelings guide your boundaries, because that's just going to take you into a terrible storm. Now, when it comes to relationships, remember, if you're focusing on your boundaries, not everybody else is. So not everybody else understands boundaries. And you may have a much deeper practice around your boundaries. You may be thinking about them a lot more than anybody else is thinking about them. So when you do relationship work on or talk about boundaries, it's very important to kind of start at the beginning and ask people, you know, what are your boundaries? And if they're like, what do you mean by boundaries? Well, then you need to explain it, because you can't assume that you're going to enter a boundary conversation with somebody and that they have the same understanding that you do, or that they're even ready for that conversation. So never assume that. So when it comes to relationships, it always helps to dial it back, start at the beginning with somebody and say, and don't just say like, wow, this is a boundary problem for me. Say, you know, I'm working on my boundaries. It's something that I actually think about, and it's something that I practice with. Just like if you were to say to somebody that you're an ultra marathon runner, you know, you would say that to somebody, you know, this is what I do, or I'm a knitter, or I'm a, you know, you explain that to somebody. I focus on my boundaries, and so this is coming up for me, and I want to make some room for you to also talk about what you need and your boundaries, because a relationship conversation about boundaries isn't just where we blast other people with, here's my boundary, but we also invite other people to share with us where their boundary is, or help identify a boundary. Now, extreme boundary challenges are when what comes up when we have stress, when we have trauma, when we have loss, when we have certain mental health conditions. So extreme boundary challenges are what we're in right now, and most people are dealing with health conditions. That's an extreme boundary challenge, because, you know, when you go to the doctor these days for any kind of medical care, if you have something serious like cancer going on, they say, well, what treatment would you like? These are the choices. And suddenly you have to make decisions and figure out your boundaries with very little information about what's going to be the best course for you. So when you have a serious health condition, that could be an extreme boundary challenge as well. So certainly coronavirus is an incredible boundary challenge for all of us. We don't really even have a lot of information yet on transmission. So we're in the early stages of that. So the thing that helps us the most with extreme boundary challenges is capacity. So if you take one word from this whole training today, and that is what you walk away from lunch with, the word I want you to walk away with is capacity. The most essential boundary you have to understand is when you are full and when you need to close. It's not when you have too much and then you keep going and you get on social media yet one more time and you're actually already up to here and you have no capacity for what you're seeing and what you're hearing. Same thing when you watch the news. You get to be too much, it gets to be too full, and you have no capacity. So with capacity, if that is the one boundary that you pay attention to when you're in an extreme challenge, is defining when you're available and when you're not available. And Jill, I saw you do a really good one about that the other day. I saw you post like, hey, I'm not available, everybody, I'm taking a day. So define when you're available and you're not available. Know when you are full. You cannot respond to everything, not in an extreme challenge. In any extreme challenge, there's too much of everything. That's the nature of what makes it so challenging. And remember, we've been in this pandemic, we're going on 6 months. So this is not something that like just happened and then it's over. We are in it. And we are still getting overwhelmed by too much coming towards us. So capacity, capacity, capacity. I say that word a lot during the day and a lot during the week. And I just notice, like, am I at capacity? Do I need to step back now, take a break, move away from my phone, not look at my email while I'm out on a dog walk, because I am at capacity. And notice when I'm there so that I can close, and that when I choose to open, and I mean open to a conversation, open to an email, anything that I open to, I want to know that I have more room inside to manage that, or else, you know, we'll be screaming banshees. Actually, I heard my neighbor the other day, I was walking my dog past her house, and she was screaming so loudly at God knows what. There were no children in the house, but at another adult, I assume. We could hear her a block away. She was way over capacity and probably not aware that she had even hit her capacity. So think about capacity. That's the most important thing that you take from this today. But of course, I'll give you more. So for you, I came up with the 4 P's of boundaries. I completely just came up with this. This is my newest, quickest way for you to remember your boundaries. So boundaries are never about getting other people to do what you want. That's called manipulation, folks. That's not boundaries. Boundaries are about your sacred circle, what is right around you and your soul. It's you. It's the boundaries around you. Boundaries are, here's your 4 P's: protective, preventative, prescriptive, and you have to be persistent about them. Okay, so let's dive in real quick to that. So use your boundaries for protection. Boundaries are part of all of nature. Every single thing you see in nature has boundaries around it, and so do you. But your boundaries are here to take care of you, and no one else is going to brush your teeth for you or bathe you. You have to take care of yourself in all these ways, unless, of course, you're in some physical health issue. So it's very important and very natural that you use your boundaries as part of how you take care of you. They're just as important as brushing your teeth. So there are many situations where you can exercise protecting yourself. And the thing I want you to protect yourself from during this extreme challenge that we're all in is too much stress. So that is the most, where's my little thingy going? Here it is. That's the most important thing that you're going to protect yourself from is stress, because stress damages your immune system. This is why all your healthcare people prescribe lowering your stress, because it does terrible things to your health. This we already know, that your immune system cannot function when you are under too much stress. that powerful immune system inside of you just kind of kicks back and goes, call me when it's over. This is way too much for me. I'm offline. Forget it. I'm just overwhelmed. And so if you get too stressed, you release too many stress hormones, and your body, your immune system can't work when all those hormones are going. So they kind of quiet down and go on the couch and they watch Netflix, and all kinds of stuff gets let loose in your body. So if you notice that certain things are stressful or painful, do everything you can to make a map for yourself to use your boundaries to lower your stress, especially in extreme challenges. The kind of maps I use are how to make a self-care wheel. And then I check in with that with myself all the time. And that is a page from the Mystery of Knowing journal. That book walks you completely into how to do your own self-care wheel and design one that is for you so that you know what it is that you need. So on prevention, I prevent many problems, especially during extreme challenges on social media. I think about what I post. I think if somebody is acting toxic or traumatizing to others, when I delete somebody, it's not because I disagree with them. I delete people if they are being traumatizing to other people or if they are being toxic. I'm a psychotherapist. My calling is to help people and to do no harm. If somebody is using my social space to injure and harm other people, that's not okay with me. I do not harm others on social media, and I think how we communicate matters a lot. But I'm also very careful about what I post on social media. It is not my journal. Other people do use it as a journal space, and then they wonder why people say all these awful things. And it is hard to manage boundaries when you share on social media. If you put your opinions out there, people are going to opinion back at you. So please notice when you're in a space that has no boundaries. Social media does not have boundaries. It is a borderless place. If you enter a borderless place and you expect everyone to have boundaries and everyone to act kind, that's on you, okay? Because that's not what happens in borderless places. In borderless places, there are no rules, and people act however they want to act, and you can't control all of that. And some people even explode when they're in a borderless place because they can. Think about my neighbor that was screaming her head off. I can't even imagine what she was doing on social media that day. And they share things and they hurt people because you're in a space that has no boundaries. And so though you want everybody to come to these spaces with boundaries, you have to recognize when you're in a space that actually doesn't have boundaries. And that will save you and make you feel a little more sane when you realize, okay, I'm entering a space that doesn't have boundaries. So when you're there, be prescriptive. That's the other P, which is, you know, you see your naturopath or your nurse practitioner or your doctor and you have a little rash somewhere and creams aren't helping and they go, oh, here's a prescription for something stronger. Sometimes you need something stronger. And you need to know when you need something stronger, and that would be a stronger boundary. So you can be a kind, emotional, soft person, but you have a firm back. And COVID requires a lot of prescriptive boundaries. If you notice, our governor in Washington has been doing boundary after boundary after boundary after boundary, prescription after prescription after prescription to try to keep us safe. And it is down to like tiny little details because prescriptive boundaries are important for certain issues. And you need to know when you need to put one in. So prescriptive boundaries always require one thing, and that is speaking up for yourself. So you have to be able to call it and say, this is a moment when I need to speak up for myself. And that means I'm putting in a prescriptive boundary. So like when I did puppy training with my husband, oh my God, that's like worth marriage counseling for 3 years. You're doing one thing that the trainer says. I think I'm following directions. My husband's doing a completely different thing. And so what happens is we're doing two different things, and we have to talk about, wait, I need the boundary here so we can train the puppy. And so prescriptive boundaries means you have to speak up. So you have to figure out which boundary you need now inside of this bubble of an extreme challenge. You can do prevention, where you don't have to say much. You anticipate what you need for a stressful or difficult situation, and then you put the boundary in. You could be protective and need to know when you say that you're not available, or you could be prescriptive, where you have to speak up. And that is required when you're around big boundary pushers or big boundary challenges. Preventative and protective might not be enough, and they might not get the job done, and then you have to speak up. And then the final thing is you have to persist, because with boundaries, it's never one and done. You have to hold them, you have to persist. Sometimes you have to repeat. I've had to do a lot of prescription for myself during COVID. I realized that a lot of my self-care strategies, and I have tons of them, they were not enough, because I'm working with all kinds of people, and people were under attack during this. They're attacked on their jobs. They were attacked with worries for their families. Their schools were closed. Their jobs went away. People have been attacked. And so as a therapist, I'm not working with a person on one problem or a set of problems. I'm working with every single person under complete attack, and worry about their families, worry about their own health. So it required me to really up my self-care and put a few things in place differently during the pandemic. A couple of boundaries that I needed, a couple of self-care strategies that I needed, and I needed to deal with the intensity of what we're all seeing. And so for me, I got into a structured therapeutic class just for healthcare providers around the world. There were 15 of us. That helped me greatly. I started doing a morning yoga on top of my exercise. And that yoga class really helped me, because yoga is really good for trauma. And we were all dealing with so much trauma. And I started an art class, a sketchbook class with Anya Tumri, who's in our Illuminating Women group. And now I'm off drawing on my own, and that helps a lot. So I just needed to add a few things for my own self-care. So remember in boundaries that others have needs. Boundaries is largely about that you have needs and other people have needs, and you want to understand what they are. And that sometimes you need to check in and recognize that another person's need might be something you can accommodate. You may have the capacity, once you understand what it is that they need, and that your boundaries have one job, which is to take care of you. So I'll take questions if we have any. Oh, unmute yourself, Jill.
Yep, I have to unmute myself. So far, everybody is liking this, and you know, I like what TU said. It reminds her of having to talk softly and carry a big stick. So, and I tell you, I love the fact that you're right. We are in extreme challenges at this point in time. And yeah, Lee, it's good to have puppy therapy. I agree, you know, and even spending time maybe at the shelter and caring for puppies, you know, looking at those opportunities could be self-care. But it's the capacity piece. I hadn't thought about that. When, you know, we're at capacity, because I purposely have put in my morning routine of yoga, meditation, prayer, and devotion time before I ever get on social media. If I catch myself grabbing my phone or emails or anything, you know, I might push my phone to make certain there's none, because I keep my phone on vibrate. I've learned I just have to keep it on vibrate. I can't handle it, you know, buzzing at me. So, you know, so I do check it in the morning, make certain somebody hasn't said, you know, hey, there's an emergency. And if I don't see that message like that, and because it tells you, I don't have to dive into it. I can just see it's come through. I put the phone away. and I go right into my routine and with drinking water, and it's that self-care, and it's made a huge difference. Because I believe, and you could correct me if I'm wrong, but when we show leadership, when we show grounded in, this is how to treat me, this is what I want to do, you know, this is how I expect, and you respond not to egg and catching your triggers when, oh my gosh, that's going to trigger me. And you know, because there's those, shouldn't wear a mask, it's against my freedom, to those who go, no, wear a mask, you know, and how that can trigger you, especially if you've got people of elderly or immune compromised, how that can be there. So how to kind of step back and, you know, to agree to disagree. Can we still have a foundation of love? Can we still treat each other as human beings? Because you brought up a very good point too, that I think a lot of us forget, that social media is boundaryless. It's the wild, wild west, and no road rules. And I think that's perfect. So before we end, and we can let everybody ask private questions of you that don't want to have this recorded, is there any last thoughts to what I just said that you can end us on here?
Well, I think that part about capacity is the place where everybody can use the most help right now, which is to really, you have your strategies, but you really have to stay checked in and keep asking yourself all through the day, am I at capacity? Because sometimes you plan to be able to handle something or to be available to your email or available for a Zoom call, and you're at capacity. And so the capacity changes all through the day. And it's not necessarily from triggers. It's just the fullness of this experience of being in the pandemic. And especially if you're working like I am through the pandemic, there is just so much that doesn't work well these days. There's so much delivery delays. There's so many things you just can't count on that, you know, even if you go to the supermarket, here on the island, you know, they were 3/4 wiped out of things. So with that, our capacity keeps moving. And so I just want you to stay aware of that. It doesn't have to be a triggering event.
Bravo, bravo. That is great. Well, this is recorded for the Illuminating Women YouTube channel. Check us out. Join us for one of our wonderful events to Coffee Break Connects, Lunch and Learns, Girls Night Out. Our next Girls Night Out is going to be really exciting. So, you know, check that out on the Illuminating Women channel. Check out Sarri. I want to get that journal. And if you can give us some links here.
Oh, yeah. So all of my books are available at independent bookstores. They're all also available on Amazon to order. And the Mystery of Knowing journal just came out in May. Transform Your Boundaries has been out a long time, and it sells around the world, and that helps people with boundaries. Naming and Taming Overwhelm is for healthcare, human service educators. So, you know, they're all out there. My private practice is full. I'm not here today to kind of sell myself in your to you as a business person. I have like an 8-month waiting list in my private practice, and I basically want to spread the word as much as I can. That's why I write. That's why I speak. That's why I teach.
We love it. And somehow we're still going to figure out how to do the soul collage with you. We were going to
oh my gosh,
September retreat with Illuminating Women, but
we'll reschedule that. Yeah.
We'll reschedule it. We'll figure it out. Well, thank you everybody for plugging in. Ladies, stay online. Let's ask a few more questions, dive a little deeper, and share a little more, because that's what we do as Illuminating Women. We support and lift each other up. Thank you, everybody. Have a great day. And thank you again, Sarri. And get those books. Boy, I'm going to go look at your website and find. All righty. Thank you so much, everybody. Take care.